You shall be king over Israel, and I shall be next to you. Even my father Saul knows that." 1 Samuel 23 verse 17. Although Jonathan was the son of Saul, the first king of Israel, he was nothing like his father. Where Saul was faithless and timid, Jonathan trusted the Lord with boldness. This is perhaps most clearly seen in the stories of father and son preserved for us in 1 Samuel. During a conflict with the Philistines, Samuel instructed Saul to wait for him in Gilgal. In 7 days, Samuel would offer a sacrifice on the altar there, and the Lord would deliver the Philistines to Saul. But the Philistines were fierce, and many of Saul's men went into hiding. Saul, who was no stranger to fear, was filled with dread. When Samuel did not arrive within 7 days, Saul decided to take matters into his own hands and offer the sacrifice himself. As soon as Saul finished offering the burnt offering, Samuel arrived, surveyed the scene, and complained, "What have you done?" As a result of Saul's disobedience, Samuel said, "You have not kept the commandment of the Lord your God, which he had commanded you. For now the Lord would have established your kingdom over Israel forever, but now your kingdom will not last." Meanwhile, Jonathan and his armor-bearer left to take on a Philistine garrison. To reach it, they had to scramble up a steep cliff characterized by slippery rocks and sharp thistles. Then they would have to subdue a crowd of angry Philistines on their own. Many would have viewed such an operation as a suicide mission, but not Jonathan. He turned to his armor-bearer and said, "Come, let us go to garrison these uncircumcised people, for nothing keeps the Lord from saving many or few." Jonathan was fearless, not because he was confident in his own ability, but because he had placed his faith rock solid in the promised will and power of God. If the Lord would fight for them, the two of them would be enough. The Lord gave Jonathan and his armor-bearer more strength than 20 heavily armed soldiers. When the Philistine army heard this, they were filled with fear and began to scatter. God struck even more fear into their hearts by causing an earthquake that sent them into a confused panic, so they began to kill each other. Jonathan was exactly right. Nothing prevents the Lord from saving many or few. His faith ensured victory, while his father's faithlessness caused him to forfeit the throne. Of course, the throne probably would have passed to Jonathan if God had not rejected Saul. Therefore, Jonathan's love for David, the man God had chosen to succeed his father, tells us much about Jonathan's faithfulness to the Lord. Jonathan willingly gave up his own claim to the throne because he understood that God had chosen David in his place, and he had no resentment, only affection for the one who would rule in his place. Ironically, while Saul stubbornly and unsuccessfully tried to keep the throne for his son happily offered it to the man he knew was God's choice to be Israel's ruler. Jonathan not only accepted his role as non-king, he embraced it wholeheartedly, eagerly protecting and promoting the one God had appointed to become king in his place. Although Jonathan died in battle, his legacy lived on through his special friendship with David. Years earlier, the two men had sworn an oath to each other. "May the Lord stand between you and me forever, and between your offspring and my offspring." David fulfilled that promise when he became king by seeking out Mephibosheth, Jonathan's only descendant, and inviting him into the palace, where he was welcomed as one of David's own sons. David gave Mephibosheth the land that had previously belonged to his grandfather Saul, and instructed Saul's former servants to continue working the land for their master's grandson. Jesus said, "Greater love hath no man than this, than to lay down his life for his friends." In Jonathan, we have a vivid example of a man who gave up his life while he was still alive, joyfully giving up all personal honor, power, and position for a friend because it was the will of God that he should do so.